The bank statement bombshell. How I finally stood up to my entitled family. That's cute, my mom scoffed. Now be a good daughter and give your brother a loan. I smiled, pulled out a bank statement, and said, "Actually, I have a different surprise for you." She laughed, until she realized what I was holding. And that's when the screaming started. I'm Sarah, 31 years old. And until a couple of months ago my life was, well, pretty normal. Nothing extravagant, nothing to complain about. I had a decent job as a project manager at a tech company. I lived in a small, cozy apartment in the city, and my relationship with my family was for the most part manageable. At least, that's what I thought. But everything changed when I got that promotion. It wasn't just any promotion. It was the promotion I'd been working toward for years. The one that would finally prove to myself that I was going somewhere. Senior project manager. More responsibility, a significant pay raise, and finally, some respect from my coworkers. For once, I was the one being congratulated, being seen for the work I put in. No more playing second fiddle to the guys in the office who always seemed to get ahead, naturally. I called my mom right away to tell her the good news. I was expecting her to be proud of me, maybe a little impressed. After all, I'd worked hard for this and it was a big deal. Or so I thought. When I told her about the promotion, her reaction was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly what I expected. That's nice, honey, she said, her voice flat. But you know, it's cute and all, but your brother needs some help. I blinked, confused for a second. What do you mean, Mom? Help with what? Don't play dumb, she snapped. He's been struggling with his finances. He's trying to start this new project of his. And he really could use a loan. You're doing well now, right? You should be a good daughter and help him out. Just like that, the reality of my relationship with my family came crashing down. Of course, I knew my mom was always the type to coddle David, my brother. He was 29, still living at home, still trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. He'd tried his hand at a few business ventures that flopped, dropped out of college twice, and for the most part he just seemed to coast along, never really facing the consequences of his decisions. And yet, there she was asking me to bail him out again. Mom, I said, my voice getting a little tight. I don't think I can just lend him money. I've worked hard for this promotion. I'm still figuring out my finances. I don't have that kind of disposable income. She didn't take it well. You're being selfish, Sarah. Your brother needs you. You know he's had a rough time. He's your brother, your family. Don't you want to see him succeed? Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. It wasn't the first time she'd said something like that. Family first. She always said. And yet, I was the one who always had to pick up the pieces after David's latest failure. The one who had to prove myself constantly while he coasted by on my mom's sympathy and excuses. I wasn't going to be part of that cycle anymore. I understand, Mom, I said, trying to stay calm. But I'm not in a position to help him out right now. I have my own plans, my own goals. Her response was a scoff. Plans? Goals? You sound like your father. Always so self-centered. Just because you finally managed to do something doesn't mean you should forget about your family. That stung more than I wanted to admit. My father had always been the type to push us to be independent, to not rely on handouts. He wasn't the one to bail out David. And somehow that always seemed to fall on me. I'm not forgetting about you, Mom, I said, keeping my voice steady even though I could feel the heat rising in my chest. I just don't think it's right to keep rescuing David every time he messes up. Maybe it's time he faces the consequences of his choices. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, the way she was trying to process what I said. Finally she spoke, but her tone was colder now. So, you're not going to help your brother? Is that it? I'm sorry. But no, I said firmly. I can't. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel the tension building. And then, just as I thought she might let it go, she said something that made my heart stop. Well, if you're not going to help him, I guess you're not really part of this family anymore, are you? The words cut through me like a knife. I hadn't expected this. I thought she'd be disappointed, but this was different. She was angry, and I could feel the weight of her disappointment bearing down on me, pushing me to a point I hadn't reached in years. I didn't respond right away. Part of me wanted to tell her exactly what I thought, to shout back, to argue. But another part of me, maybe the part that was finally tired of being the responsible one, the one always trying to make everyone happy, decided to do something different. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Mom," I said, my voice more cold than I intended, "but I'm not going to apologize for setting boundaries." And with that I hung up. I was furious. I had just gotten the best news of my career. And my mom turned it into another one of her guilt trips, trying to pressure me into fixing David's problems. But I wasn't going to let it go. I had something planned. Something I'd been considering for a while. I wasn't just going to let my mom walk all over me anymore. No more being the obedient daughter, who always did what was expected. It was time for a change. But I wasn't going to tell her right away. No, I wanted to make sure she understood what was happening before I dropped the bombshell. The next day I called my bank. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with the information, but I knew I needed leverage. I needed to be prepared for what was coming next. And when I hung up with the bank, I had a plan. A few days later, I went over to my mom's house for our usual Sunday dinner. I'd been dreading it, honestly. My mom had barely spoken to me since that phone call, and I could tell she was still holding on to her anger. But I also knew that this was the perfect opportunity. It had been building up in me for years, this sense of unfairness, and now I was about to do something about it. When I walked into her house, everything looked the same. Her spotless kitchen, the family photos lining the walls, the faint smell of garlic and herbs from whatever she was cooking. The usual setup. My brother David was lounging on the couch as usual, his face buried in his phone. He barely even looked up when I walked in, as if I didn't even matter. Typical. "Hey, Sarah," he mumbled without much enthusiasm. "Hey," I said, trying to keep the tension out of my voice. I glanced over at my mom, who was stirring something in the pot on the stove, her back to me. "You didn't tell me you were bringing a lawyer with you," she said without turning around. I could feel her words dripping with sarcasm. I ignored her comment. I didn't want to make a scene, but I need to be upfront about this. I took a deep breath, setting my purse down on the table next to me, trying to gather myself. This was it, the moment that was going to change everything. "Well, I guess we need to talk about David," I began, my voice calm but firm. She whipped around, the look on her face already defensive. "What about him? I know you're upset about the money, but I think it's time to have a real conversation about how we've been handling things," I said. She scoffed. "What do you mean? I've already told you your brother needs help." I nodded slowly, trying not to get frustrated. "And I get that. But what I don't get is why you've always expected me to be the one to fix things for him." "Because you're capable, Sarah," she shot back. "You have a good job. You're the one who made something of yourself. Your brother is struggling and you're turning your back on him." I could feel my patience starting to wear thin. "It's not that simple, Mom. You've been covering for him for years, and it's not helping him. You think he's going to change if I keep giving him money or bailing him out? He needs to stand on his own 2 feet. My mom crossed her arms, the same stubborn look on her face that I knew all too well. "You sound just like your father, always thinking you know better." I didn't let her words shake me. Maybe it's because I do know better. I've been working hard for years, and now I'm finally in a position where I can do something for myself. I can't keep enabling David just because it's easier for you. She took a step forward, her face reddening. "You don't get it, Sarah. I don't need you to lecture me. I'm your mother. I'm the one who's always been there for you. And this is how you repay me." I looked at her, my heart sinking in my chest. This wasn't about me. It was about her expectations, her need to control everything. "I'm not repaying you, Mom. I'm just trying to set boundaries. I'm trying to finally live my life the way I want to, without being dragged down by guilt and responsibility for someone who can't get their act together." There was a long silence. The tension in the room was palpable. David didn't say a word, still glued to his phone, not even looking up. My mom was seething, but she didn't speak. That's when I did it. I reached into my bag and pulled out the bank statement, the one I'd been carrying with me for days. My hand shook slightly as I unfolded it, holding it up in front of her. She looked at it for a moment, confusion clouding her expression. "What's this?" she asked a little too casually. I smiled, though it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had been pushed to their limit. I think you'll find it's an account balance, I said. A balance that, if you're interested, would allow me to make some very interesting decisions. Her face twisted in confusion, and then recognition hit her. I could see her eyes flicker to the numbers on the statement, and then the shock slowly spread across her face. I don't understand, she said, her voice lowering. What are you saying? I'm saying that I'm done, I said, my voice steady but full of weight. I'm done being the one who fixes everything. I'm done being the obedient daughter who does everything you ask. Even when it's not fair to me. I've been working hard, and now it's time for me to take control of my life. It's time for me to stop letting you manipulate me into taking care of your problems. I could see her processing the words, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to find a response. Her face flushed with a mix of anger and disbelief. You can't be serious, she said quietly, almost as though she couldn't believe what she was hearing. You wouldn't turn your back on your family. I held my ground. I'm not turning my back on anyone. Mom, I'm just finally putting myself first. I've been trying to make everyone happy for so long. But it's never enough, and now I have something you're not expecting. I paused for effect, letting the words linger in the air. I'm bringing a lawyer next time I come here. And I'm taking steps to make sure I'm not just the good daughter anymore. I'm going to start making decisions that are best for me. You and David can figure it out on your own. My mom's face went white, and for a moment I thought she might collapse. The anger was still there, but it was mixed with something else now, fear. Fear of losing control, of losing me. You don't mean this, she whispered. I do, I said softly. And you'll understand why soon enough. As I left my mom's house, the feeling in my chest was a mixture of relief and anxiety. I had done it. I had finally stood up for myself, something I'd struggled to do for years. But as I walked to my car, I felt a knot form in my stomach, and for a second I wondered if I had done the right thing. I had always known my mom would react badly. She had a way of twisting everything to make me feel guilty, like I owed her something for simply being her daughter. And then there was David, who, despite being perfectly capable of standing on his own 2 feet, had been allowed to fail without consequence, his problems always conveniently landing on my shoulders. But this time I wasn't going to let that happen. The day after the dinner I sat down at my desk at work trying to focus on a new project, but all I could think about was my mom's face when I showed her that bank statement. I could still see her jaw dropping when she realized I had saved up a significant amount of money in an account she didn't know about. I'd always kept my finances separate from the family, partly because I didn't want them to know how much I had and mostly because I didn't want them asking for loans or handouts. I hadn't wanted to go as far as I did, but I knew I had to make a point. I had to show my mom that I was in control of my own life now, that I wasn't the person I used to be, the one who let everyone take advantage of her. The truth was, I'd been thinking about this for months. The idea of showing my mom I was financially independent and taking control of my own destiny had been building slowly, like a fuse burning down to an inevitable explosion. But it wasn't just the promotion or the money, it was the years of resentment that had built up, the countless times my mom had undermined me, and the way David was constantly excused from the consequences of his failures. That night after I left my mom's house, I spent the next few hours processing everything. I didn't regret what I had done, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was about to explode. I hadn't heard from my mom, but I knew it was only a matter of time. The call came in next day. I saw her name flash up on my phone and my stomach dropped. Sarah. My mom's voice was strained, almost pleading. We need to talk. I know, Mom, I said, trying to sound calm, but I could feel the heat rising in my chest again. What do you want to talk about? Why did you do that? Why did you bring that up? She asked, her voice breaking. You knew it would hurt me. You knew it would drive a wedge between us. I took a deep breath. I didn't do it to hurt you, Mom. I did it to make a point. For once, I'm not going to let you or David manipulate me into doing things I don't want to do. You keep asking me to bail him out to fix his missed. But when do I get to focus on my own life? When do I get to have my success without you trying to turn it into a way to fix your problems? There was silence on the other end of the line for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was low, like she was trying to hold back tears. I've always done what was best for you, Sarah. I've always tried to protect you. I thought you'd understand that. I understand that, Mom, I said, my voice softening a little, but I don't need to be protected anymore. I've been protecting myself, and I've been taking care of myself, while you've been doing everything for David. It's not fair to me. I need you to see that. There was another long pause. Finally, my mom spoke, her voice quieter now. I don't know what to say, Sarah. I just wanted what's best for you, but if this is how you feel, I'll respect it. I don't want to lose you. I could hear the sincerity in her voice, and it almost made me feel guilty, but deep down I knew I was doing the right thing. I'm not going anywhere, Mom, I said, trying to calm her down. But things have to change. I need to live my life for me, and I can't keep being the person you expect me to be. I know, she said softly, almost as if she was resigned to it. I just don't know how to let go. You don't have to let go, Mom, but you do need to trust that I can make my own decisions. It's time for us both to start living our own lives, and that means not using me as your safety net anymore. The conversation ended awkwardly, and I hung up feeling a mix of relief and sadness. My mom hadn't reacted as badly as I feared, but I knew things wouldn't be the same for a while. It was a shift, a hard one, but I was ready for it. A few weeks later, my mom reached out again. This time it wasn't to argue. She was calmer, and she even acknowledged that she understood why I had done what I did. I guess I didn't realize how much I was leaning on you, Sarah, she said. Maybe I just didn't want to face that David needs to figure things out on his own. I've always wanted to protect him. It's okay, Mom, I said, but I need to protect myself too. You've raised me to be strong. Now it's time to live that strength. So here's the situation right now. Things have been pretty rocky between me and my mom ever since the dinner. We've talked a few times since, but it's clear there's still some unresolved tension. She keeps saying she understands, but I can tell she's hurt. She's trying to make things right, but it feels like it's all coming from a place of guilt rather than real understanding. My brother David hasn't really said much to me since I showed up with that bank statement. He's still doing his usual routine, acting like nothing changed. I'm pretty sure he's angry, but he's not the type to confront me directly. He just keeps avoiding the issue, which honestly only makes things worse. As for me, I feel conflicted. I know I did what I needed to do for myself, but there are moments when I feel like I might have taken it too far. My mom's been reaching out more frequently, asking if we can meet up and talk things through. Part of me wants to go, but I'm not sure if I should. I've been holding my ground, but now I'm second-guessing if I was too harsh, if there's a better way I could have handled it. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm just not sure. So I'm wondering, am I the a-hole here? Should I have gone about this differently? I'd really appreciate hearing other opinions, because I'm starting to question whether I was right to make things so uncomfortable for everyone, even though I know I needed to stand up for myself. What do you guys think?